going to talk a little bit about, kind of just to tell you a little bit about myself. And then, before we dive in and kind of get into it, the way that I kind of structured it is really, I was thinking, according to the crowd, I kind of like skimmed down the whole product management process. So to those of you who are learning product management, want to learn product management, or want to understand anything in product management, I kind of like skimmed it down, the whole process, but also related to data. So at the end, obviously, if there's anything that doesn't make sense, or you don't understand, we're going to have questions, feel free, okay? So a little bit about myself. Between 2009 and 2013, I started 2 companies, both in the ski travel space. This was an Israeli company. It became the Israeli Kayak for Ski Vacations, the largest comparative sites for ski vacations. We started this in 2010, same group. I moved out here in the States. Pretty much the idea was to extend this business and turn into an entire company of itself, where we built a personalization engine for ski vacations to help people book their vacations in a much quicker way. The good news is that we sold this in 2013. Bad news is we had to close this one down. Both were bootstrapped. Happens, it's part of the game. And then after that, 2013, I decided to take a short break for like 3 months, got married, went on a honeymoon, came back, started learning product management at a different school. But this obviously, the person actually that was my producer is today at product school, so highly recommend her. From my understanding, she's like one of the product producers for the whole, from my understanding, the whole school, I don't know. She's awesome. Anyway, 2013, as I was doing that, I started consulting for this company. Who knows this company? Okay, who used E24 to order food? Who actually went to the door without pants to grab the food? So anyway, over here, I started consulting for them 2013. And then 2014 came on full time as their head of product, all the way until we sold to Yelp in 2015. And then I became the senior product manager at Yelp 2015, 2016. Obviously stayed with E24, focused mostly on expanding our what we call our courier service with ride-sharing services. We were partnered with Sidecar. Unofficially, and again, this is for this to stay in this room, unofficially, we kind of invented the Uber Eats model, where we would take drivers that were doing ride shares and use them as couriers for restaurants. This year, we kind of like exploded with it. We did like 5 major cities in the U.S., almost 800 restaurants. And then today, what I do, and please excuse me for the buzzwords right now, but I really do this. But I do cannabis tech and blockchain investment, and kind of like researching the utilities right now. I've been in blockchain for like 4 years right now, and really diving into the concepts of it. It's fascinating to me. Obviously, the cannabis world as well. No, I'm not a heavy user, but I think there's a lot of potential for it. Even though you are a heavy user, it's great. It's all good. So these are the companies that I'm working with. Blaze Now, which we redid the whole kind of platform. Capna Labs is an extraction services company. So what we do over there is we provide services for other brands who want to, do infused products or anything that's based on cannabis oil. And for those of you who maybe know this brand, it's one of the top vape brands in Southern California. So that's our consumer product of the group. So that's me. Now, let's start. So, today we're going to talk about how does data influence product. In my personal theory, before we dive into this, building a product is actually a function of learning what works and what doesn't. We're going to talk about this a lot. And understanding what works and what doesn't. Because that's the basis of everything. So, first of all, our first collection point is understanding our problem. Who has a problem with it? Understanding the users and really understanding, most likely, what is the problem you're trying to solve, but not from your perspective, from those that really truly have that problem, okay? understand who your users are, but you know, like really get to know the problem, get to know their problem in person, and not just read about it. Don't, you know, Steve Blank said, get out of the building. It's for real, okay? Like, one of the things that, I mean, personal story that I can tell you, okay, is when I joined E24, one of our biggest problems was the restaurant aspect. E24 is a consumer product, right? It's made for people to order food, right? But then there's an entire section where that problem became a 25,000 people problem. There's the restaurant owners also. And if they're having problems, you know, kind of like understanding what we wanted from them, then the system's not working. So that was my main focus, for example. So when we're saying really understand the problem, I would go to hundreds of restaurants, sit with a lot of restaurant owners, hear, you know, what they had to say. All of a sudden, the problem gets a different face. Something's not really smiling at you many times, but sometimes it is, you know, but still. So meet your users in person. Okay, get to know, hear their perspective of the problem. Again, remember, your perspective needs to be collecting data. This is the second data collection point, okay, of understanding your user's problem and really understanding who they are. Obviously, getting their perspective, you know, and make sure to capture their insights. It will come in handy along the way. Like, you will have a sparking moment when you actually go to the people, the users with the problems. You're actually going to listen and hear their problems and hear them talking, and all of a sudden you're going to be like, oh, that's interesting. Those gems are what's going to propel your product and put it in a different place. So keep that in mind. Define your value proposition, okay? So value proposition, all right, is your first hypothesis for your solution. It is actually, the way that I like to see it, it's the first description of your solution. Keep it simple. Meaning, when I say, and again, this is a suggestion that I wrote here on purpose, so everyone can put it in their minds, no more than 7 words. If you're putting a value proposition that would take you more than 7 words to explain, you're doing something wrong. You didn't properly understand the problem. It's hard. It's not easy. Have no mistake. So you're going at it, you're going at it, you're going at it. It's fine. Try and you will refine it. You will improve it, and with time it all goes well. But you need to get to a point where anyone understands your problem. It's okay if someone that doesn't understand the problem doesn't understand your value proposition. That's fine. But for those who have that problem, if they don't understand the value proposition of your solution, you're already doing something wrong. So the reactions to it, that's what I'm talking about a lot. That's going to be your third data collection, which will help you understand kind of where you're going and help you iterate it accordingly. Now, so we understood the problem, we understood our users. We have a value proposition. Let's go ahead and build a product, right? That's what we're all saying. When you have that solution written down, and believe me, it literally feels like ding, and then you feel like a superhero for wanting to going ahead and solving a problem. Ask yourself, does it actually solve the problem that you found in the user you identified? And one of the things I forgot to mention when it comes to the users is to make sure you capture your conversation, either write them down, either record them, because you will need to go back to them. This is that point where you will go back to them. Now, you know, your fourth data collection point is going to be cross-referencing your hypothetical solution with the user's perception of their problem. That's why it's very important to capture the problem from the user's perspective. So this is the actual point where you cross-reference it, and you're like, huh, okay, that's going to be your second iteration, right there. All right, so we did that. We cross-referenced our solution with the users. We're ready to go. We're ready to build it. Hold on. Before you do that, you need to understand how are you going to collect data? How are you going to know that you're actually solving the problem? Because, like I said, remember that slide with the superhero in the light bulb? You feel invincible. Don't let hubris go up to your head. Okay? Remember, You figured it out, you cross-referenced it, you're ready to go, it's fine. You are not going to get it the first time, and it's okay. You're not going to get 100%. But you want to make sure that you're measuring what works and what doesn't work, and you need to know how. Now, how will you be collecting the data? Okay, what is the data that you're going to be collecting, and what are your KPIs and OKRs? Who knows what KPIs and OKRs are? All right, cool. So I'll explain what they are. KPIs are key performance indicators. Okay, OKRs are objective key results. So if we put them in a way, objective key results are here, and then they're broken down into KPIs. Okay, so KPIs are like the small goals that we want to achieve in order to get the big goal. Okay, what is the objective key result? That needs to be also very simple. Okay, it needs to be very close to the value proposition. And then on top of the OKRs is the value proposition. So you can break down the value proposition into OKRs and then break it down into KPIs. The more you break it down, the smaller the proof that you break it down, the easier it will be for you to learn from it, in a way. So that's why data collection and understanding how you will be collecting it is extremely important before you start building. Okay? That also includes understanding what are the tools you're going to be using. I'll give you an example for myself, working with Bloom, okay, which is a physical product. It's in shops, it's in dispensaries. We're not digital, okay? We need to cross-reference a lot of things, all right, for a physical product. So, I don't know who here, I mean, you know, again, the way that I see product today, it's not just digital product. You know, digital product, measuring it, simple. It still requires understanding how you're going to be doing it. You're also going to have to check your backend. You're going to have to make sure that your database is clear and understood where and what data you're going to be pulling from there, your SQL, to whoever understands what that is. If you don't, it's fine, you will. Okay? But then, having those points and understanding what points you're going to be looking at, that's going to help you fill in the blanks very, very quickly. And then you'll understand very quickly if you're proving it or not. All right, so we're ready to build. Okay, we have our developers, we have our designers, we have our data, we have the concept, we have our users, we have everything. Okay, when you are building the product, remember, you're not building it for yourself. You're building it for your users. This is something that me personally, I got a chance to see in many, many places. Okay, that what happens is, okay, is that as product managers, we're so proud of the fact that we found a solution. But there's a lot of times when people say, yeah, I want to do lean, I want to do agile. What that means is that you break your solution all the time. So don't fall in love with your solution. Fall in love with the problem you're trying to solve. Remember that. Otherwise, it's going to be a pain in the ass. Because I've seen it a lot of times. So that's one thing for ourselves as PMs or future PMs, but also for the opinions around us. One thing that happens is that when we're working at a team, and listen guys, I'm like doing this really, really quickly. Building a product takes time. It takes a lot of time. So we're used to like working with a team around us, and then the opinions start to come in, right? But there's one thing that I would remind myself that any time, any team that I would work with, am I the user? Am I the one that has the problem? Am I the one that's feeling it right now? Am I the restaurant owner right now that's sitting in a restaurant receiving orders and not understanding what the hell is going on? And how am I going to deal with it? No. That's the person you need to keep in mind. Always, always, always. And it's hard. It's not easy. You know that once you start building, right before you launch, there's this annoying little thing called QA. Making sure that everything works. And you're like, at this point, you're like, I'm ready to go. I want to launch this. I want to do it. Blah, 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 blah. But this little thing is really, really annoying. Full disclosure, this is where I started from, by the way. After school, I started the QA department in SimilarWeb, for whoever knows that company, in Israel. So, QA of our code is extremely important. QA of our design is extremely important. But then there's another thing that we forget, and it's QAing our data as thoroughly as possible. Because essentially, our design doesn't matter anything, okay? It doesn't mean anything. Our code doesn't mean anything. This does. Because this is the thing that will tell us, are we right in what we did, or are we wrong, and what do we need to correct? This is actually the most valuable thing that we need to be collecting. Not the style of our design, not the language of our code, not this technology or infrastructure that we're going to be putting in. It all needs to serve a certain purpose, and this is it. And this is the indicator that we need to be looking at. So make sure that you're QAing this properly. Now, this is the fun part. Now we launch. We did everything, right? We QA'd the hell out of this. All right? We're ready to go. We want to see this work. So just launch. Go ahead and launch. And then watch the data flow. This is the point where you enjoy the fruits of your labor. You observe how your product works, okay, for a defined period of time, and let the data be collected. Don't jump to conclusions on the first week that your product is out there. It's just 1 week. And if that is the time frame that you're defining yourself to get decisions, unless you're working with like extremely big data, kind of like, pass-throughs that you have a lot of information running through, and a week is the time frame that you need to be proving it, it's okay. Calm down. 1 week, a lot of things are going to happen. My personal recommendation, always wait between 2 weeks to 1 month. More so, go for the month. You want to have a full time frame, okay? Not 1 day, not 1 week, 1 month. Because within those 4.5 weeks, you're going to see a lot of things happening. You're going to learn a lot about everything, unless, obviously, if it's critical bugs, critical things that are like affecting the performance of the product. Fixing bugs is iteration. You're already learning something. It's great. But otherwise, sit back and relax and see what happens. Again, unless it's like critical bugs, you will have them, fix them. It's fine. Now, you're going to check your data. Probably that's the reaction you're going to have. You're going to be like, wow, oh my God, no. No way. There's no way that this happened. It's either going to be for the good or for the bad. The most important thing, understand what works and what doesn't. Okay? What works is the most important takeaway that you're going to be getting. What doesn't work, that's the job of the PM. And guess what? It never ends. There's always something to fix. Okay? So if you think that if we think that there's going to be a perfect solution and that's it, guess what? When you learn what works, you also learn what doesn't work. So when you get to a certain point of a solution and you say, oh, this is going to solve this problem from this and this aspect, maybe it did, but then all of a sudden there's a whole other plethora of other things that we couldn't predict. We didn't know. That's a good sign. Okay, it's a very, very good sign. If the performance results of your product will surprise you, remember, it's a good sign. It's meant to be that way. It means that we're learning. Okay? And obviously this is your 5th data collection point, and obviously the most exciting one, because it's how users are interacting with our product. And it literally is one of the most satisfying moments. So that's another moment you should be enjoying, for the good and for the bad. But you made it all this way. This is going to be your job from now on. Now you already have a real benchmark of things that are moving through. Now, so what's next? What are we going to do? First of all, after you sat down on the data, you started gathering the insights and everything, a lot of things are going to come through your mind. Okay, a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts. Capture those raw thoughts. Do not be afraid. Do not hesitate yourself. And I'll explain why. Because 95% of the time, this is right. Okay, excuse me, 99% of the time, this is right when it comes to these decisions. Now, why am I saying these instincts? Because look at the way that we've gone through to get here. We've been through a lot, guys. We understood a problem. We understood who our users are when we spoke to them. Okay? We went ahead and, and then we figured out, how are we going to measure, how are we going to do this with them. Then we went and we built, we QA'd, we checked the data. Instinct is already there. You're already way very deep in it. So write down your raw thoughts, because I'm not saying you need to be following it 100%, but most likely the first thing that comes to mind, most cases that's the solution you need to be going with, okay? If you've gone through this process. If you're coming from an outsider and you don't know what you're talking about, okay, it's a different point. But if you've gone through this whole process, you probably already know what you're talking about. And you know the feel that you need to be getting. There's one thing that I've learned. Designing a good looking product is a lot of fun. It's very short term because styles change. Building a very, very solid technological product is also very cool. But technology advances, so you're left behind. The only thing that really, really matters is always striving to learn what works and what doesn't. And understanding why. Figuring out why, and then working around that. Working in this cycle. That's exactly why I put in this, this cycle here. So, it's learning. And then as you go through this, shit of a process, because it's not fun. It's fun, but there are a lot of hard points in it, and there's a lot of shit in it, But what the best part about it is, you start to develop instincts. You gotta trust those instincts that you develop during the process. Because it'll happen, naturally, promise you that, Fail fast, understand what doesn't work, understand what works, you will develop instincts, 100%. So, at this point, we're going to gather all our thoughts, and we're going to compare them to all the data points that we collected throughout the process in order to help us make the right decision moving forward. So we're going to take the user interviews, we're going to take the problem definitions, we're going to take the value proposition, we're going to take the KPIs and OKRs, and after we actually figured it out, and then we're going to say, okay, now these and these and these are the decisions. Most likely, that once we have this, we're going to be building this. We already got this. It's probably going to bring us this. It really works. Really, really works. Thank you for listening. Questions, anyone?
Where does A/B testing fit into your overall framework? I guess that might apply to existing products more than the new one, but
So, great question. A/B testing, the way that I see it, there's no in a digital product environment, there's no such thing as argument. There's A/B testing. So, if you think that this button needs to be red and I think that it needs to be orange, that's when you A/B test. Okay? Obviously, if you're there's always going to be points of conflict as you build something, or you want to improve it, or you want to tweak a feature. It's going to maybe work like this, maybe it's going to work like this. It all depends, on that. On that point, it's really cost and effect. Okay, cost and gain. How much is it going to cost to make an A/B test on this? And if we prove it, what's going to be the gain? If it's going to be in a conversion rate, it's going to be improving the exposure to something, getting more eyeballs. You really need to understand. That's another thing that's very important in an existing product, And then you could have the approaches, I want to A/B test everything. It's going to take you a million years to do it, okay? But there are extremely important things to do. I'll give you an example. E24's mobile website, okay? There was a banner. There was one banner. We couldn't make up our minds what picture we wanted to put there, what was going to be the wording, what color was going to be the button, and how big the banner was going to be, and if it should be on the top and at the bottom. Guess how many tests we ran? Simultaneously. Not 2, 9. Alright? And we eliminated. We eliminated. Do you know how many we were left with? 4. 4 were equal. you know? So how do you make up your mind, you know? So that's another thing that I'm saying, is that you have an A/B test, so like if you put yourself through too many A/B tests, right, you're gonna be making a decision essentially, okay? It's gonna help you make a decision, yes, but sometimes it's also going to, like, you know, it's gonna stick you too long. So as a product manager, that's why I'm talking about those instincts. When they are developed, you have to trust them. You have to take that leap of faith and say, okay, that's it, okay? Yes, A/B testing is very, very important, okay? But it's not going to solve all the problems. Your instincts are the ones that are going to be doing it. The ability to dare and to be bold and do something, that's what's going to take you further. And please, as product managers, you will make mistakes. I promise you. It's okay. All right? No one's going to kill you. That's another thing I can promise you.
Oh yeah, I had a question about just the analytics tools that you use. Like what, like for web and mobile specifically, what do you feel like have been the best for you?
I mean, okay, I am a huge advocate of Google Analytics. Big believer in it. I mean, I've been using Google Analytics since 2009. Since it literally came out, it was super buggy and all that. They really are the best, in my personal opinion. What sucks about them is that you really need to be organized. Okay, you really need to. Excuse me, it doesn't suck. Okay, I'll take that back. Okay, if you're not organized, it's not as helpful. What am I saying about organized? That's exactly the point when I was saying about understanding how you're going to be collecting your data. For example, when I build a page for a mobile app, for a website, okay, I track every pixel on the page. Every button, I know how it's called, where it's going to be, and it's not just about me. Okay, I make sure that all the stakeholders, whether they're on the tech side, on the biz dev, on the marketing, on the sales, on the support, they're going to be able to understand what's going on. All right, we had a methodology at E24 where we would screenshot the page that we were going to do, and one of the things that I initiated over there was literally taking an arrow and saying, this is going to be the event name, and this is going to be the event label. For those of you who don't understand what it is, Google Analytics measures clicks by groups. So you have like page view, you have an event name, and let's say we have, so let's say a drop down is an event name, and then we have like 4 categories within that event name. It's going to be event labels. If it's broken down, if it's just a button, it's going to, the name and the label are going to be the same. Okay, so I would be that meticulous. Okay. And it's actually something that helped us learn a lot at E24 and really propel our growth in 2014. Because when I got into the company, we know jack. We were like assuming, and by the way, a lot of companies work this way. Okay? They don't put the effort. That's why I was like stressing it, of understanding how you're going to be collecting your data and making sure that it actually works. It will save you so much time. It will increase your productivity tremendously, and it will make you move a lot quicker. Okay? It will also help you make decisions that will save you a lot of time developing the A/B tests. If again, depending on what it is, you know, it's kind of like whenever you need to use that trade, then you do it. But so the rest, essentially, they have this cool feature, they have that cool feature, but essentially, really, it's what you feel most comfortable with. And it's really what you feel that, you know, that measures it in the best way. But make sure to always cross-reference it with another kind of like measurement, and make sure that it works. Because when we reorganized all of our data, all of our analytics, that was a monster of a project. That was 20 products that we had to do. Okay? So one of the things we did was we would gather information from the database. Now the database, you can't mess with it. You know? You can, but not really. Most companies won't. Okay? So, but the database is a very hard, rough, kind of like data source that you can't manipulate. Like you can't know how many times a certain button was clicked, unless it, like for example, at E24, it would process orders. So we knew how many times that button was clicked, okay? Or how many times this page was loaded. But if I wanted to know how many times the user would press the plus button on an item, you don't really know, you know? So again, it all goes back to what you're comfortable with, but also make sure to have a certain benchmark, you know, that you compare it to know if you have the discrepancies. And by the way, the analytical tools always have discrepancies. It's okay. Any more questions?
Yeah, two-part question, just thinking of that item. Is there any way to make, for the whole team, the information kind of like water, so whether I'm a designer or developer, so anyone can easily find how many times someone has clicked that button? Because I know that leads to a lot of other efficiencies for the whole company. Second question is more of a quantitative thing. When you're at E24, were there any things that you did to help scale? You talked about asking, getting out of the building, talking to the restaurant owners. Is there anything that you were doing, developing surveys, that after a while you were able to quickly get information? That's a long question, I'm sorry.
It's fine, it's fine. But let's start with the data aggregation first.
Yeah.
There are tools. You should research them. We personally didn't have one. Right before, the acquisition, when you get acquired, it's really nice in the press, but it's a big mess. You know, it's like, this company now changes its opinion, you need to start doing this thing. One of the things that I was responsible for was building our own in-house dashboard, okay? Because we had most of the discrepancies and all that. Now, how do we share it across the company? It's really granting access to the stakeholders that require it for the analytics for specific things, which you can do. Or, usually what we would do both at Yelp and at E24, if, like, let's say we had to back our, our claims with data, we'll just pull it out and just display it, and we'll show this and this and this and this. Because the less technical, again, unless you're talking about a data scientist, which most likely they'll have access to all the data tools, even more than you as a product manager will. If you go to sales, you go to support, you really need to take out the piece that they care about the most. For sales, if I'm going to say, we would say this, we have a restaurant in this area, the conversion rate in that area is killer, bring me more restaurants over there. That's what they really care about, rather than, listen, the company's whole conversion rate is X, we need to improve it. Their first question is going to be, okay, where do you want me to focus? So it's also really use data to your advantage to make a point. But that's another thing, is understanding your users, okay? Understand who you're presenting it to and what are they going to get out of it, for your benefit and the company's benefit. All right, so that's one. The second one, the question was how
basically methodology to help you scale.
Okay, so one of the things, for example, that the restaurant owners are one of the best examples, okay? So when I started the restaurant owner projects, I understood that if we're going to send them surveys, nothing's going to happen. Okay, why? Because restaurant owners have the, the culture, call it, or the habits. They're hosts, okay? They want people to come into their house. Their restaurant is their house, it's their kitchen. They love hosting. Like if there's one thing that I learned about restaurant owners, 80% of them care. You know what the thing that they care the most about? How the dish comes out. And when they look at you taking a bite and enjoying yourself, that's it. You made their day. Most of them don't really care if they're making enough money or not. They don't understand, is the food cost too high? Am I paying too much rent? All that stuff. The good business owners are. Absolutely. They understand how to make money. 80% people don't. Why am I telling you this? Because you need to understand, first of all, you need to understand your users and how are you going to collect data. If you're talking about tech people that they don't have time and they'd rather fill a 3-question survey in order for you to gather that data, do it. Absolutely, 100%. It really depends on who your users are. So, going back to my story, okay? But restaurant owners, what I did with them, I sampled a few restaurants that were extremely successful in a certain area, a few restaurants that were not as successful in a certain area, and by the way, I sampled San Francisco and LA, okay? San Francisco was our hometown, so it was obviously more reachable, and it was our second or third largest market, I think. LA, number one. Number one, biggest market. And not just that, LA is not a city. LA is a country. That I learned from the restaurants. The people down here in Santa Monica, wow, they treated the entirely different. They have an entirely different attitude than the ones in Sunset, in Pasadena, in the Valley. You know, it's a whole other ballgame. You know, so you start to understand. But then, so for example, what I was doing is I was building the whole restaurant owner panel. Okay, so the restaurant owner panel was a product that, like, you know, that was the whole interaction of the restaurant owner with their account. Cutting the story short, I sat down with each and every one of them, sampling it and getting their kind of like feedback. I think when I did that, I sat with around 50. And again, I'm not telling you go and speak with 50, you know, like customers. It's fine. I mean, there's one thing I learned is you don't, you know, you just, again, those instincts that you start to develop, then you already know, you know? Like today, my golden number is always 10, all right? Like at least 10. But one of the things that I did over there is I would take their kind of like, you know, their stories and find a common denominator, right? When you're looking at data, try and find patterns. When you find patterns, start following that line, okay? Because that pattern is where the problem is, or the solution is, or there's something interesting there, okay? So that's another reason why I was saying it's so important to capture when your interaction with the user. So when we did that, and we decided to rebuild the whole restaurant owner panel, we launched it, okay? Now, at that time, by the way, this was before we redid the whole analytics stuff and understanding what was really going on. But then something magnificent happened. 50% of the calls from restaurant owners dropped. So that's a function of scalability. You know, you make those tweaks, you listen to the customer, and you really supply their needs. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, going back to QA and data, can you expand on that a little bit? Maybe some examples?
Absolutely. You define all the data, all the KPIs, everything, how you're going to be measuring what and all that. Right before you launch, I mean, one thing that you do in a development environment is you put it in a beta environment. That's where you test, okay? You want to test that the product works properly, that the intentions are actually being, you know, executed, that everything works properly. Another thing, it should be already connected to your analytics system, and you need to start clicking buttons and making sure that everything works. We broke down E24, I think 4 times. When I say 4 times, it was the Android app, the iOS app, iPad app, website, excuse me, even more. Website, mobile website, and we would literally go through the whole site and click buttons. Does it appear? Yes. Does it appear? Yes. Does it appear? Yes. Are there more efficient ways to do it? Yeah. But essentially, our goal was to get to a point where if all the stakeholders really understood it, we wanted to see with our eyes that this happened. Okay? That's kind of like the methodology. There are other ways today to kind of do it, you know, I mean, if you really implement it in code and you know that it works, you know, like, again, like I'm saying, your instincts, they're gonna like, you're gonna start doing it a lot quicker. The more you practice something, you know, like it starts to run quick. But I mean, today I'm in tech for 9 years. Okay, I still am not scared to get my hands dirty, because sometimes you need to get your hands dirty in order to really learn, and that's part of it. It's a very annoying process, believe me. but it's worth it. It's 100% worth it, you know? And by the way, it's an ongoing process as well. You know, because then you want to measure your funnels, you want to make sure you don't have discrepancies, you don't want to have like different drop-offs, all that. It's an ongoing process, okay? That's where the birth of data scientists became, because it's kind of like endless, you know, but as a product manager, you got to focus on your value proposition. How do I actually do it? The discrepancies, you know, you start to kind of like, okay, how do I solve it? You also sometimes get to a point where you can't solve the discrepancy because you're not qualified for it. It's fine, okay? There's no shame in saying, okay, I don't know. I need someone else that does know to give it to you. They got to help me out. Does that answer your question? Awesome, cool. Any further questions? Yeah.
I've got a couple questions. First one is, how do you measure the success of a new feature when you may not have, when you may not have a baseline? For example, you add a new feature to a page, you hope that there's some usage of that feature leads to, let's say, more conversions or more orders. But in my experience, like if you have a site with a user base already, you add something on the site, people are going to interact with that feature. And if they interact with it, they may not, in which case the feature is a total flop, and that makes things a lot more clear. But in general, like if you add a feature, people will engage with it, and people who are more engaged tend to convert more in general. So what do you do in those types of cases?
So again, it all depends on, and it kind of goes back to what I was talking about, OKRs and KPIs. What do you want to get out of it?
Define that.
You got to define it, because again, I mean, if we're going to make a feature right now that's going to improve the conversion by 1%, it could be a crazy hit, right? But if we were trying to improve it by 5%, you tell me, is it a success or not? And maybe, not only that, maybe it's 1%, but the engagement is far out of this world. Like boom, it shoots up the time on site, time of usage, all that stuff. Okay, interesting. We tried to improve the percentage of conversion by 5%, right? By 5 volts. We made this beautiful feature, interaction, simple thing, only 1%. But shot up our time on site by 5 minutes. Crazy on scale. That means we did something, we're surprised, right? We did something we didn't expect. We did it right. We learned something. Okay, so the hell with that 1%. We learned how this works. How do we take that and use it for our advantage? You also might get to a point where you're like saying, okay, it doesn't necessarily help me. I'm just going to kill it. Okay, it's fine. You know, there's a rule of thumb that that says it's more based on visual design. If you're placing an element on a page and you're getting less than 2% of clicks on it or usage of it, you kill it. That's my rule of thumb, you know? Now, what if it's 195? What if it's 205? Again, that's what I'm saying. Those instincts come to play. There is not like a handbook that says this does what, it depends on so many things. So, again, how do you define a successful feature? My question is going to be to you, what do you define as success? Then based on that, you really measure. Because, like I said, a feature could be a flop with what you define as success, but it could open up a success on a different place where you never even knew. That's why this is beautiful in my personal opinion. It's one of my favorite things, to do when building a product, and I think that it's the most essential.